Hi, we're just going to talk today about interest rates and looking at should you stay floating for a long time? Should you be fixing now? Just a little bit of the maths on floating, fixing, yeah, for short term or long term, how that looks. So it's all about the maths. I don't have the perfect predictions. I don't have a crystal ball, unfortunately, but we'll just go through some of the maths and especially answer that question, should you float for a long term or what should you do? So I'll just share my screen. We've got a standard example, we've got a loan of 500,000. So the first simple little thing I've just put in there, maybe you could look at splitting it up. You don't need a $500,000 loan. Maybe you could do 250 and 250. Give yourself different options, or you might do a 20,000 floating that you might pay off, and then 240 and 240. Main thing with that is you can split the loan up. You don't just need one lump sum of 500,000 or $1 million. You can split it up into multiple different loans. One might be fixed 1 year, one 2 year, one 3 year. You can have lots of different options. You don't all have to do the same. Next thing I'm looking at, which is the major one, is looking at floating. What happens if you float versus fixing? So obviously there's talk in the media. The media is pricing that interest rates are going to go down 0.25% and 3 times that, so 0.75% total from August 24, so later in this year. So the temptation is going, oh, I'll float. I'll stay on floating now for April, May, June, July. I'm hoping that interest rates are going to go down a bit in August. And what would that look like? So if we did the maths on that, say we floated, and standard rates, if you look at interest.co.nz, maybe 8.64%, but let's say you negotiate, you use a mortgage broker, you get a better rate, maybe more like 8%. So your interest for the 6 months is $20,000. You're then hoping that in 6 months' time you can fix on a lower rate. So current rates for 6 to 12 months, they're about 6.9%. If you go to a broker or you negotiate and you get a better rate, they might advertise 7.24, but they're really probably 6.9. So 6.9, and say the market gets it right and the interest rates go down 0.75%, and maybe you get lucky and that's before you have to fix. So 6.15%. So we float for the first 6 months, 8%, 20,000. We fix at 6.15% for the second 6 months. Our total interest is 35,375 for the year. Option 2, rather than floating, we go, let's just fix it for 6 months now. We're hoping that interest rate drop's going to come, but exactly when it's going to come, we don't know. So if we fix for 6 months, at least we're getting a better rate. So rather than being 8%, we're 6.9%. So our interest for the first 6 months is only 17,250. Then 6 months' time, we hopefully fix for the same, 6.15% we just discussed, 15,375 interest. Total interest, 32,625. We save 2,750. So that's something really worth thinking about. And the key sort of concept this highlights is you don't want too much floating. To float for a week or so, that is fine. You don't want to be floating for 6 months at 8% or more because you're going to pay a lot of interest. You're much better off if you're going to float for a longer period. Fix it for 6 months. It's still going to come up really, really quick, but it's going to give you a much lower interest rate. So that's the first thing that we look at. Then we might look at some good 2-year rates at the moment. So one of the banks is offering or advertising 6.75% for 2 years. So if we look at that over a 2-year period, we're going to be paying 16,875 in each 6-month period. We're going to be paying 67,500 total. So then what we look at, if we add to my first option, we go, okay, we think interest rates are going to go down. We're thinking that maybe they're going to be 6.15% in 6 months' time. And maybe if we fix, that's the first year. Second year, maybe we're hoping it's going to go down to 5.5%. That is been hopeful. I'm trying to paint a picture of what you might be looking at. I'm not saying interest rates are going to drop to that. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. But if you expect them to keep dropping, you might be thinking 5.5. So then we are looking at interest in each 6-month period. They're going to be the same. So we would be looking at only 13,750 in each period, 27,000 total for that 12 months. So that would give us total interest 63,000 compared with that 2-year rate of 63,000 versus 67,000. Yeah, so that would, by not fixing for 2 years, if the interest rates went from floating 8% to 6.15 to 5.5, you would save 4,625. Obviously, if we do this option 2, it is going to be better still, because it worked better for the shorter period. So if you use that, you're going to pay the same interest, but it's even going to save you a little bit more. It's going to have some lower interest costs. So that would cost you 60,000. So what I'm saying with that is just watch those longer term rates. The 2-year might look quite attractive today, but if you're expecting interest rates to go down, yeah, you might find that actually just using the 6 months or 12 months might save you a lot. And especially if you're looking 3, 4, 5-year rates, be very careful that if interest rates do come down, that potentially you might be stuck on a very high rate and it might take a while to get from that. I did have myself perfectly organized with this. So if we just bring this across. So this is the Reserve Bank's predictions. No one gets it right. No one has a crystal ball. But obviously the Reserve Bank has a lot of information, a lot of experts working towards their estimates. So they're expecting the official cash rate. This was based on February's report. They're expecting it to come down from the current level to come down quite a lot over the next couple of years. So yeah, the market is pricing in those 3.25% drops from August this year, 24, and this is what Reserve Bank is predicting. So when you're looking at longer term average, you need to make up your own mind, but obviously looking at some of the experts, what are the banks saying? What is the Reserve Bank saying? And they're expecting the OCR to start coming down and therefore interest rates start coming down, and the banks are sort of predicting the same. So you can sort of use that to be helpful a little bit, but yeah, there is no perfect answer. So going back to this, if you thought that, for example, interest rates were just, yeah, maybe you don't think they're going to come down. You think that they're still going to be 6.9% in 6 months, and they're still going to be 6.9% for the next year after that. If you looked at that interest rate would be higher than fixing for 2 years at 6.75. So it's all about what you're sort of expecting, what your expectation is. And if you think interest rates are going to crash more, you'll find that the longer term, the 2, the 3, 4, 5-year options are not as good. So yeah, just different things to think about. Key thing, don't float for too long with too much money. Think about splitting the loan, and that's a good conservative option. You might be thinking that interest rate's going to drop, but you want to be a bit conservative. You want some security. You might do some a bit longer term, some shorter term. If you're more aggressive, you might go more 6 months, 12 months and hope it goes down. So yeah, hopefully that's just given you a few things to think about. And yeah, obviously time will tell. It'll be very interesting to see inflation announcement out later on this month. And yeah, the funny thing with inflation is they talk about 4.7% annualized. So even when this current one comes out, if it was 3.9%, it's still going to be, that would actually be very good because it's all the way back to 1st of April 23 until now. So yeah, what happened from April to September is having a huge effect on that inflation rate and what our inflation rate will be. Whereas if you look at just the December quarter, it was 0.5%. So yeah, don't expect miracles in that inflation rate because it's still got April to September data in there. It's just about going to be impossible to get much lower than 3.9%. But the last 2 quarters are likely to be low. So the December quarter was 0.5%. If the March quarter is 0.5, they'll work out at a 3.9. If the March quarter was 0, then we could get a 3.4. But obviously that is a low inflation rate. So somewhere in the high 3s would still be a real big improvement and show our inflation's really low. The problem is inflation data is going all the way back to 1st of for April 23, it's so out of date when you're looking at annual data. And to me, they really need to look at the monthly or quarterly data that's available. And if we have two low quarters at 0.5, that means our real inflation rate's more like 2%, which would be a lot better. So hopefully it's given you some good information. Yeah, we'll look forward to that inflation information coming out, and yeah, see what happens with the OCR over the next year. Thanks a lot. Bye.